Hello, my name's Cliff Stevenson and I'm the Helpful Economist. The NHS is in crisis and people are dying unnecessarily as a result. A recent report by the King's Fund compared the NHS to other countries' healthcare systems, and the results are frankly shocking. I'm going to share the 10 most devastating facts from this report with you that really put the UK to shame. And at the end, I'll tell you the only thing that's going to save the NHS, including a radical proposal which might surprise you. Number one, the UK has the second lowest life expectancy amongst comparable countries. It's the US that has the worst life expectancy, but the UK is second. The two dotted lines show 2020 life expectancy for female and for males, and the UK is far behind many of the other countries. Number two, the UK has below average health spending per person in 2019 and 2020. To the left of the red vertical axis is below average health spending per person, and the UK isn't the worst, but it is clearly below average. As a percentage of GDP, the horizontal red line shows the average, and the UK is around the average level. Number three, the UK has below average investment in healthcare infrastructure. This includes things like buildings and equipment. The UK actually has half the level of capital spending than the top four countries. Number four, the UK has fewer doctors and nurses per person than most peer countries. Below the horizontal red dotted line is below average number of nurses. To the left of the vertical red dotted line is below average doctors' numbers. The UK is the worst of all countries on this indicator. Number five, the UK performs badly on health workers' pay. Nurses in the UK earn just below the wage of an average worker. In the top chart, 0 means that nurses' wages equal the average, and you can see that UK nurses are paid just below the average worker's wage, whereas many other countries pay significantly higher. Number six, the UK is one of a few countries that has seen doctors' salaries fall in real terms, and this is shown in the lower chart. Below the horizontal line indicates that real pay has fallen, while other comparable countries have seen real pay increase for doctors. Number seven, the UK has fewer CT and MRI scanners than other countries, by far the lowest in terms of number of scanners per million people. Number eight, the UK has fewer hospital and intensive care beds. The UK is way down the list. So we've had 8 of the 10 so far, but unfortunately the worst is still to come. Number nine, the UK has higher avoidable mortality rates than other countries, both for preventable and treatable causes. Again, the UK is way down the list. And number 10, the UK has higher than average fatality rates for heart attack and strokes. Again, the UK is performing very poorly compared to most other countries. So here's a recap of the 10 facts. This report card doesn't look good, and it doesn't even include waiting lists, which are at record levels. The data to make these comparisons doesn't exist, so it wasn't fully in the report. I just don't think this is acceptable. I think we should expect a world-class health service. So what were the consequences of this report? Well, these are shocking findings and they were picked up by the press. But as with many of these things, they came and went. A few days later, the government actually announced its NHS long-term workforce plan. And this set out plans to train and retain more NHS staff. Now, the announcement was generally welcomed, but there are some questions about the detail, and much of it is actually setting ambitious objectives rather than being very specific about what's going to happen. When you look at the new plan, many of the provisions relate to productivity improvements. There is a need for real productivity improvements, but my fear is that some of the things in the report will be used as an excuse to try and squeeze more out of existing resources. So, for example, there's discussion of virtual wards, there's discussion of the use of artificial intelligence, there's discussion of reducing undergraduate degrees for doctors from 5 to 4 years, and there's talk of taking advantage of EU exit freedoms to reduce the nurse clinical placement hours, which may make it possible for nurses to join the nursing register up to 4 months earlier. All of these may be desirable developments, but they are about squeezing the system to get more out of it, looking for shortcuts perhaps. But they must be accompanied by much bigger changes. Even if this plan is successful, it only actually deals with the fewer doctors and nurses issue of the 10 points that we raised earlier. Now, there's only one real answer to all of these problems. The NHS, in my opinion, needs a massive increase in funding. This means increasing doctors' and nurses' pay significantly, and it means investing in infrastructure, buildings and equipment. I think the current approach of both the Conservative and Labour Party is committed to the idea of that we can't increase borrowing and we can't increase tax. I think what this means in practical terms is that we just struggle on and hope for growth, and in the meantime try and squeeze more efficiency gains out of the current system. It's definitely true that we can't increase borrowing, and for me the only answer is to increase tax. The UK has so much wealth, and I'm not talking about increasing income tax. There are many taxes that don't create similar economic distortions as income tax. These are wealth tax and land value tax. And here's one radical idea. Let's convince the super rich that it's worth investing in their country. Previous tax increases are done against people's will. But I think that why don't we have a political party that actually tries to persuade the rich that it's a good thing to invest in the NHS? We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. I love living in the UK. There's so much that's good about it. But I think we should expect the best health system in the world, and that it should be free to use for everyone. These 10 devastating facts clearly show that we're currently failing dismally. It doesn't have to be like this. Let's come up with a dramatic funding plan now.